Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Maya Rupert. Maya is a political strategist and the third Black woman in history to run a presidential campaign. She is the executive vice president at Blue State and hosts the podcast When We Win, an NAACP Image Award nominee. A nationally respected voice on progressive politics and the Democratic Party, she has appeared on MSNBC, CNN, and NPR, and in the New York Times and The Atlantic. She lives in Washington, D.C. with her cats. Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this platform with me today. I'm really honored and grateful that you're taking this time to share your journey and your experience. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Denise. Thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to our later conversation. This is great.
Yeah, of course. So, just starting off, you've mentioned that you've worked at the highest levels of political campaigns and strategy. So can you please explain what pulled you into political work and what kept you there through the harder seasons as well?
Sure. I mean, honestly, I've spent most of my life in movement politics. So like adjacent to electoral politics work. It always felt like I was in politics, but not really like of it. And I think I made the shift. Honestly, it was because I met someone. I worked for Julian Castro when he was Secretary of HUD. And he was the first politician, like person I knew who ran for office, who wanted to run for office, who I felt like I could see was doing this stuff for the same reasons that the people I knew, we were doing the work. It was just a different path. So it was honestly the first time I really saw that it was like, you can be justice focused and work in electoral politics. And I thought for a long time it was more either or. So I think that I credit him a lot with opening my eyes to what a career in politics could really look like.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to talk with you more about that. So when you look back, what did you think working in politics would mean? And how has that definition changed for you over time?
I love that question because I think so many of us who don't, like, unless you grew up and like were steeped in it, you had family who worked in politics and you heard about it every day. The ideas that we have about working in politics, I think, are really different than the reality of it. Like, I think, one, we have a very narrow vision of what it is. It's like you work for campaigns and that's like it. But like I said, I mean, I worked in, social justice movement politics for a long time and felt adjacent to the electoral political world. So I think there's a lot of movement work you can be involved in. I think there's a lot of media. I never thought of media as being a part of like that world. And now I'm like, you can't have one without the other. So working in media or being a journalist or being an influencer, there's so much that you touch on in politics. And then honestly, even the stuff that you more traditionally think of working on campaigns, there's so many different roles and so many different ways to engage. I think there's this vision that you have where you're just sitting around with really smart people and you're candidate and debating issues. And it's like, yeah, that happens and that's cool. But like a lot of times you're just running an organization. So it's everything that goes along with that. So I always like to remind people of that because it's like, if your career hasn't been spent in politics, but you are a really talented manager or you're a really gifted organizer, or you know how to translate something into a digital like landscape, or like you're a storyteller who knows how to hear what someone's trying to say and translate that to different audiences, there are places in politics for you. And I think sometimes we limit what we say we mean when we talk about that. Like we need event organizers and people who know how to make the trains run on time. Campaigns are giant things and they require so many skill sets. So there's just so much that you can do and work in politics.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I really love that. And for myself, I've done a lot of like work on the ground and community. And I think sometimes I feel intimidated by politics, but I love that breakdown though, just like how skill sets can be used and, just being into politics and using different skills. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I will say, I think that a lot of us, and I will say, I
Hmm.
do think that it's especially true of women, especially true of women
Right.
of color. We sometimes take our skill
Uh-huh.
sets and make them overly specific. It's like, oh, I've done work in community, so that's what I can do. And it's like, doing work
Right.
in community can mean that you know how to organize. It means that you know how to
Yeah.
lead, manage, build. Like there's so much that goes into so many of those things. But
Yeah.
so often we will tell ourselves, well, then this particular thing I can do. It's like if you are steeped in like community work, like I'm hiring you for the
Mm.
political team, the organizing team, there's just
Okay.
so much that has to happen in so many different worlds. And I think that sometimes we just need someone to take a skill set and graft it onto, well, this
Right.
is what we do on a campaign, and this is exactly what you're doing day to day. So I always just like to remind us of that because I think way too many of us select ourselves out of some of these
Right.
opportunities because we're like, well, my background isn't in politics. And there's such a direct line between so much work
Right.
we really do naturally and political work because frankly it's just the industry that gets us our leaders. So
Right.
if you know what a community needs, you know what a campaign needs.
Right, right. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I really love that. And so you've made history as the third Black woman to run a major presidential campaign. So, I really love that too. And so, what did this role actually feel like day to day, beyond just the headlines that people would see?
Running a presidential campaign was just, it is the most amazing experiences of my life. Like, I think it was,
Right.
but it was fun and it was also weird and ridiculous. And like I said,
Hmm.
there are parts of it that you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this amazing thing. And then there are times that we're like, we've just spent the last 3 hours, like,
Right.
trying to make sure that like we have insurance coverage for our team. It's like
Hmm.
any other organization, like the really dry, mundane stuff that you do, or the really ridiculous, like we're poring over a tweet in
Hmm.
hopes that we can get something out that says something but doesn't upset somebody else. So it's a very big job and it just kind of entails a lot.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, your work often sits at the intersection of race, gender, and institutional power. So, where do you see the most persistent myths about who is electable or credible in politics? I think this is a really important conversation that people need to have as well.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot because
Hmm.
we have these ideas about who's electable,
Right.
and they get reinforced in these seemingly benign points. I just wrote a book, the Real Ones, which talks about the concept of authenticity. And
Right.
authenticity in politics comes up so much, and we say it because it's like we're like, voters want their candidates to be authentic, but the
Hmm.
truth is, the way we read people as being authentic or inauthentic doesn't always have very much to do with who they genuinely are, if they're being real or if they're being
Right.
honest. It has to do
Hmm.
with how we perceive a
Hmm.
performance. And when there's that much bias that can be built in, then
Yeah.
it makes it very easy for us to just use something like authenticity or
Hmm.
likability or some of these things to just reinforce what we've already decided is true about
Right.
whether or not people can be elected.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. So, you've also written for outlets like the New York Times, The Atlantic, and Slate, and you also host a podcast. So, how do you think that storytelling shapes political possibility?
I think that we are hardwired for stories, right? Like that,
Uh-huh.
it's just a very human thing. And so
Right.
if we can figure out a way to get a narrative that tells a story that resonates with people, it's
Uh-huh.
amazing how much we can expand the political imagination. And I
Hmm.
feel like right now we're seeing a moment of that. I think we're seeing gifted communicators and gifted storytellers
Right.
who are expanding what people consider possible. So
Uh-huh.
many times, the limit of our politics is just the sort of the next question why, right? There's always
Right.
a point at which you go, well, that's just how the system works. And
Oh,
so many times the difference between us accepting it or changing it is someone credibly being able to say, well, why?
right.
Why is it that someone can work full time and still not be able to afford their lives? And that's okay. There are times when we say something is not okay. We wouldn't allow ourselves to go to war without funding it. We wouldn't allow ourselves, right? We said that the banks were too big to fail during
Mhm.
the recession, right? We have moments where we say, that's not possible. We have to come up with another way. Why don't those times ever work for regular people? Why aren't we ever saying that
Right.
next why? Why does the system work that way? Why isn't it ever in favor of us? And I think being able to credibly tell that story is how people have started wondering,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I mean, I guess people don't have to sleep on the streets. Like that doesn't, we don't just have to
Right.
say that's how our system is. And so the more people are willing to say that, the more that political imagination expands and lets us
Right.
get to the next place where we can say, all right, well, maybe that'll be one of the things we won't allow to happen.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And that's what I really appreciate about your work too, because storytelling is incredibly important to me as well. Actually, that's why I wanted to do this podcast because I wanted to tell the stories behind these stereotypes. So I think me being an activist too, like I do recognize those like systemic issues and barriers that
Yeah,
people have. But just like it comes down to we're just humans who want to like live lives with like dignity and everything. And I'm hoping that as people are listening to these stories, that they can realize that, people just want to live their lives with dignity and respect. And I don't see how something like that can really be controversial because I really think people deserve that kind of respect, living the way that they can. But yeah, to me, storytelling is incredibly important as well.
it is, right?
Yeah.
It links together so much for us.
Right, right. Thank you. And I'd love to talk with you more about that too, in regards to media. So, where do you see media helping justice movements, and where do you feel that sometimes it might flatten or distort them as well?
Yeah. I think that legacy media has a place, but I think it is very limited in
Okay.
helping justice movements, especially right now. Because I
Right.
think, frankly, because I think that the model existed and really peaked at a time that we aren't right now. So I think they're
Hmm.
amazing. I mean, this is not an anti, I still read and consume a lot of legacy
Right.
media and I appreciate it. And the people that are doing that work, I think, are doing incredible work, especially in a moment right now.
Uh-huh.
But I think that a lot of that model
Hmm.
depends on a level of gatekeeping that
Right.
in order for justice movements to really succeed, we have to be able to break down. So very often, for example, I'll see something play out in the political world like, you know, a new candidate starts running for office, right?
Hmm.
And it's somebody who's never held office before. She's a woman of color. She's talking about issues in a way people don't talk about them. And immediately the question is, if she gets coverage, if she even gets media coverage from legacy media, the first question is, can she get elected? And it's always asked in that way. It's like, yeah, but can she get elected? She's new. She doesn't have the money. She's talking
Right.
about this. She seems so extreme. But as soon as the question is asked,
Yeah.
that basically becomes the cycle. And now the media reports on other media. Oh my goodness, yes, she had a big rally, but now there was a panel saying whether or not she can be elected. So let's talk about her electability and let's talk about her authenticity or her likability or
Right.
all of these things that are really coded to make it harder for her to get elected. And then
Hmm.
those stories lead to donors being hesitant because they're like, I don't know, these places
Hmm.
don't think she can get elected, so they don't give money. And then when she can't get money, her poll numbers don't go up. So now she's polling at the bottom. So now that same legacy media can report on the fact that she's polling at the bottom. And what we've really had is one metric just get treated as a bunch of different ones. So
Right.
media is incredibly important. A well-functioning democracy does not exist without a well-informed electorate. A media has a critical role in all of this. But
Right.
I do think that we need to expand our definition
Uh-huh.
of media and expand our media diet. There needs to
Right.
be more independent media. There needs to be more media that is not controlled by conglomerates that are not neutral in our fight for justice. It's not a coincidence that in a moment where more and more people are calling for, you know, more accountability for folks at the top, higher taxes for corporations and billionaires. The billionaires that own those newspapers are reporting on these things differently. Those things aren't coincidental. And I don't know how to fix it in the world that we live in, except to say there have to be more options. If billionaires can own the Washington Post, then we need 20 more places to make up for the fact that there's going to be a Washington Post, right? Like we need independent media, we need podcasts, we need diverse podcast hosts. We don't, we need it to be, there are a lot of places where people can go and get their message out, because the answer to conglomerations and like the consolidation of the media has to be more options.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And actually, I'd love to talk with you more about authenticity and in specific your book as well. So your book, The Real Ones, explores how racism can distort authenticity. So what does being authentic even mean in systems that reward conformity?
I honestly, I don't think authenticity means anything. At this point, the way we use it popularly, I do not think that authenticity exists. I think that it can mean something as an individual pursuit. I can say, I want to live according to an authentic life, and I can have a good sense of what that means. But as soon as I try to interpret authenticity for you, I'm no longer talking about the same thing. Because if you want to make sure that you're living authentically, there are a set of questions you can ask yourself that you are the expert and really the only arbiter. But if I then say, well, you don't come across as authentic to me, I'm now mixing in a lot of bias with how I think you should be behaving. And that's based on things that don't have anything at a certain point even to do with you, and much more to do with me and every other preconceived notion I brought to our interaction. And that is particularly challenging when authenticity is treated as important as it is in our society. We treat it as though it is the only way to a good, just, and like fulfilling life. We treat it as it's the only way to be a qualified candidate. And if we're going to hold people to this standard, we should have a working definition of what it is. And at this point, every time I ask somebody what that means, they have like 10 different things that they'll say authenticity means. And that means that when we're judging it, so much bias can seep in. And so we get some candidates who are told they don't seem authentic, but I can't really put my finger on why not. Or, yes, I'm asking everyone to be authentic, but I'm pretending as though everyone's authenticity is treated the same way. And I know that it's not. So without problematizing some of this and treating it more the way we would treat any privilege, I think we're getting authenticity wrong. And I think it's too big for us to be getting it this wrong.
Thank you for sharing that. Actually, you opened my eyes to that. So I'm a very small creator, so I don't have big platforms like that. But that's something that I've been struggling with as well, because I really want to be authentic, but also like my authentic self is really quirky, and I'm not looking to go viral or anything like that. But sometimes I'm like, there are pieces when I have to see what's resonating with people and go with that, but still try to be authentic to myself. And thank you for sharing that, though. I never saw that as being like, just it challenged my worldview as well, because I think authenticity is really important. But at the same time, when you're saying like, how can someone say like, oh, you're not being authentic enough? And like, how can you say that to someone if like they're trying to be their true self?
Right. Yeah. And there's so much that goes into that. I mean, just what you just said, like, yes, you want to be your true self, but you want to resonate with an audience.
Right.
And just that tension is going to problematize what authenticity means and what it looks like. And then you add to it the fact that everyone's going to come with a certain idea about who you are and who you should be. And that's based off of other creators that I have seen that do the same kinds of things, or are from your same neighborhood or background or whatever, right? So that's when I start saying, like, for people of color, for women of any race, there's a whole extra layer of things that gets layered onto us that doesn't necessarily have to do with who I am, who you are, but who people expect. And if you act outside of it, even if you're being yourself, you can get labeled inauthentic in a way that feels really psychically jarring.
Right.
Or you can be told, oh my gosh, I love, you're so authentic, when you're like, I'm faking that. Like, that's not really me. I just know that that resonates. And so it starts to be like, what are we really measuring when we measure authenticity? And is the thing we're measuring a huge value to people? That's what I wanted to kind of grapple with the book.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And, thank you so much for your time today. I had such a wonderful time talking with you. And even in this short time that we've talked together, I feel like I've learned so much from you. But as we're wrapping up, I'd love to just end on the note of hope. So when you think about the next generation of organizers, strategists, and everyday citizens, what gives you hope right now?
I think a lot of what we've been talking about, I think we're at a moment right now where there's actually an opening of a political imagination. And I want desperately for people not to shut it prematurely. And I'm already seeing it. I'm seeing so many people saying, we can't do this, it's too extreme. Right now, we have people that are saying, I'm willing to topple our political system because I don't think it's centering the right people. That's a moment we should be taking advantage of, and it's exciting. And so I want to urge people to do that more, to explore that. And I think that the frustration that people are feeling, I think it's because we're in this moment where we're seeing things that we thought we could take for granted get torn down. And when those things get torn down, when we think about rebuilding them, we don't just have to say, well, let's make it look exactly how it looked before. We have an opportunity here. And I think people are ready to take it. So I'm seeing new people challenging so much of the status quo, things that make me uncomfortable. The most hopeful thing to feel is discomfort when you know you're on the I'm on the second part of my career and the people coming up, I should feel discomfort because the things that I thought would have to be true are the things they're challenging. That means that what they're going to be fighting for next could actually be qualitatively different. And that is exciting, even though there can be moments where I'm like, wait, that's so much change. We should feel that kind of discomfort. That's a good sign.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time. But just lastly, how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you or learn more about your work?
Absolutely. You can come. I'm at mayarupert.com is the easiest way to get me. I am online on Instagram and Threads, Facebook. I am Maya.Rupert. On Blue Sky, I'm at Maya Rupert. On X, I am at Maya Rupert. So I'm pretty easy to find on the social medias. So
okay, wonderful. I wish you all the best in your work. And I just want to leave the space open to you right now to see if there's anything else that you'd like to leave, any words or thoughts, anything else that might not have come up in our conversation today. I'd love to leave that space open for you.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I think we covered mostly what I wanted to. I'm just looking forward to chatting with you more.
No, me too. That's what I was thinking too. You're always welcome back to this platform. I feel like this past half hour just flew by. So
I know, that was great.
I'd love to have you back again. But, thank you again for everything. You're doing wonderful work. And, I really believe it takes all of us working in different things. That's why I'm love hearing people from different expertise, because I only have so much knowledge and experience myself. I feel like, if we could really work off of each other, I think we can create the world that we want to see. But yeah, I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Same to you, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
Every time I feel so mad and sad and bad, I say to myself, relax, lean back, it's a brand new day. And every time I feel so down that a friend